Mr. Hitler, if you think we're on the road.
Whoops, the copyright word. Okay, I'm now going to make a video on everything that I've discovered about what happens in wartime, and it all takes us back to the Caradoc ship that I mentioned yesterday. Within 24 hours of me revealing that the Duke of Cambridge was on that ship in the Crimean War, they have totally rewritten British history on Wikipedia, and the remnants of what they've left take me right into the war crimes in places like Normandy and Amiens, which takes you right into the heart of the religious Christianity jokes, and to the bosses at the IMF. I've stopped that really quickly for copyright reasons, okay? Amiens is just near here. Yeah, near here. That's Amiens, Amen. Do you get it? Ahemna. He's down here in the Egyptian Canaan region, where ink and printing devices were invented to create the Bible. And there are 2 treaties of Amiens. Okay, I've sent myself a little message on Facebook, on Gmail, and it's amazing how many Gmail messages I've received since I began to report the war crimes, and how many people are prepared to obfuscate my time when they purport to be serious fraud and war crimes investigators and commentators. Okay, right then. Who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Hitler? And I've gone back to my civilian gear, because when I was in the Bismarck stuff, it looked as if my bum was big in that, okay? So, Amiens, true love, prize-winning links to sinking ships by the Caradoc. Okay, it's all a little bit enigmatic until you look at it ever so superficially, and then you see that all wars right back to the 15th century involving these place names are entirely for profit, and for the launch of the IMF to make the for-profit concept a global formality. Okay? And the French are right at the epicenter of that, which is why I'm not using the ooh la la videos again, because everything they do is a massive crime. And sorry, I should have done this before I imposed my mithril jersey to you. Okay, right then. So that was quick. Let's hope that it opens quickly. And I could show you pictures of the beachheads and the Dad's Army team and all of the cover-ups, but I think you now understand that the whole of the Dad's Army team is a joke. Yet Wilson is the American president that led us into World War, or led America into World War I in 1916, just as Blackadder was making the joke. Hodges is a massive interlocking director with the Rothschilds. Mainwaring is John Robertson Mainwaring, and he is a massive holder, and he's worth trillions at the HSBC banking empire. I forget what the names of the other ones are. Godfrey is a treasonous admiral mentioned in the okay, so these are the pictures now that I've shipped in from my other computer, so I can show you the horrible news on the telly. And this is pictures of the Crimean War, okay? And overnight they have almost removed everything on Wikipedia, and they've slanted it into a thing called Wikimedia. And when they do that, you know that they're getting desperate in their attempts to cover things up, because Wikipedia is openly engaged in, but the response time to write new articles in Wikimedia covers the defection of Depardieu, the defection of Snowden, and when they appear in Wikimedia, you know that it is a special ops cover-up, okay? Take my word for it. And it's loading ever so slowly, but this is pictures of the, if I click on that now, it will take us to another website, and it will show us pictures of the Caradoc in the places where it has been deployed, and there are 2 Caradocs and that has been acknowledged overnight since they made the revelations on Adolphus and King George V of Hanover, who was the sire of Queen Victoria's first and only legitimate child in the UK. He was on the Caradoc as the Duke of Cambridge when he was offshore from the Crimean war crimes scene, and he died in his bed in London, in Piccadilly in London. He came from originally, so he could make Queen Victoria a legitimate royal, from the Hanoverian region, in a town called Cambridge in Hanover in Germany, and he's on the boat that is launching its missiles into the Crimean war region, and that is from the Narrows at Gallipoli, which are called the Dardanelles, and all of it gets replayed over and over and over again. Okay, so I've tried to open that. Oh, here we go. Right, let's wait for that. So there are pictures that are much more explicit online, unless they've covered it up in the 2 hours since I created that. Okay, I can now shut my Gmail site down. And that will take a wee bit of time. So let's have a look at the other tabs in the meantime. So there was a Caradoc, which was a steamship in the Crimean conflict, and that's the one where the German was on board. And in the Crimean, we were fighting with the French against the Russians. In the other, oh, here we go. And they're lovely, lovely series of images. And the Caradoc was openly deployed. Album of over 60 original photographs taken by a crew member of HMS Caradoc during her service in the Baltic Sea, the Mediterranean, and near the Crimea. Okay, and it's a prize-winning period of service, and the prizes are given out by people that are stunningly new to me, but are a joke at world history too. And the prizes are massive in cash terms. Okay, so what do? We can scan through the images and see a few of them, and it would be useful if we could confirm which of the... So there's Caradoc duck shooting party at Libau. Libau, mentioned in the song by Donovan about Hitler's crimes. Yeah. That's a different conflict. That's World War II, but all of them interlock through the Amiens word that comes into the story later on, better known as the Somme. Okay, and you've got the double-barreled gun, the elite rowing icons, and all of them think it's really, really funny. Let's show you a few more. Okay, there is HMS Caradoc D60. Now the G letter that I found yesterday stands for Greenock. It was built in the Greenock Docklands, and it was decommissioned in 1947 after the Second World War. Profiteering was over and the money was safely tucked away. Okay, That Caradoc there has only one R. Now when you look this up and you want to find these series of pictures, the website has two R's. That's changed overnight. Okay, there is a crew of loyal Navy persons. Okay, and it does not really tell us what each of the images is in this mode. Let's go visit the page and see whether we can do it a bit more explicitly with a little message. Ah, merde. Okay, so there you get the little transcript of history. HMS Caradoc, built by Scott and Lade, down on the 21st February 1916, launched 23rd December. HMS Caradoc joined the 6th Light Cruiser Squadron in June 1917. Okay, so this is the Second World War warship, and its sister ship is called the Cassandra. Do you get it? That's the Cassandra song, sang about the familicide in Sweden involving the monarchies who are resolving their own destinies and who gets the throne next. Yeah, that's Sweden that is strictly neutral in wartime and peacetime, and launches statisticians like my mate Hans Rosling. Yeah, who's part of the Bill Clinton world ownership team, and I did not realise that until 2 days ago. But this is less useful than the images, but I'm now going to move back to the tabs on the OneNote record and get through the shocking news that all of this is pre-planned, yeah, and that they get prizes for being treasonous, for being murderous, and for being genocidal, and all of that is run by a company that involves the name Truelove. You remember when Princess Grace was killed in Monaco by her elite friends, and Bing Crosby, the war profiteer and the bond salesman, was singing to her on the elite yacht? Yeah, that's part of the Truelove sinking ships and prizes for war crimes initiative launched out of the capitalist world that now steals entirely from every global citizen on our earth. Okay, let's go back to this. So you get the picture. You can scan through all of those pictures. You can see the World War I vessel decommissioned by the time that World War II was over, or you can see the Crimean steamship and all of the places where they've been involved in offshore bombardments with the Duke of Cambridge, who's a German with a dad called Adolphus. Yeah, they die in London, in Piccadilly, and in, what's the name of it, Richmond Palace. Yeah, and they are the sires of Queen Victoria's only legitimate child. Yeah, that's the younger one, blind Prince George of Cumbria, and the other people in the family much earlier are involved in the massacres at Culloden, and all of them are fighting against the Germans in World War I. Isn't that funny? Right then, Wikipedia, there's nothing, since I made the exposures on the illegitimate bloodlines in the monarchy, there's nothing left on Wikipedia on these themes. Okay, so this is the HMS Caradoc. It confirms that there was a steamer, then an oil-driven warship. Okay, but it is only a paragraph now. 2 ships of the Royal Navy have borne the name HMS Caradoc after Caradoc, a semi-legendary figure in Welsh history, or other figures of this name. HMS Caradoc was an iron paddle gunboat launched in 1847 and sold in 1870. HMS Caradoc was a C-class, that's the C word, light cruiser launched in Greenock in 1916. She became a base ship in 1944 and was scrapped in 1946. So the River Clyde boat that was the collier is no longer in fashion. Yeah, we no longer need the by the time we get to Gallipoli in World War I, we no longer need the coal-fired steamship. Okay, and this was truncated exactly at the moment that I discovered that Wikipedia was publishing all of the details of that. This page was last modified on 16th April at 10:29. I think today is the 18th, and I've had 2 days to make the videos and to get it all over the world's news. Yeah, and on this morning, everything is totally twisted now. There is no truth being told at all, and when you look at the world history and the magnitude of these cover-ups, then you can see that the whole of our medias are totally dedicated to cheating the people. Okay, so that's how quickly they respond. Okay, let's have another look at the prize-winning concepts and these other tabs. I'm just going to get through them so that my battery's doing it. Oh, and this is shocking. Okay, it's really shocking. So there's the new one. That's the oil-driven, magnificent battleship. That's not the one that the Duke was on offshore from Gallipoli in the Crimea. This is the one that was used to brutalise the world in World War II, entirely for profit, also made in the Greenock Yard. Okay, the submarine next door, which may not have been a nuclear submarine in that time, is also still the issues that we've dealt with Trident. Now the Trident story is seeping onto the front page of the newspapers, but none of them are prepared to tell the truth, that none of it is in the hands of the government anywhere. It's in the hands of the profiteers and the mercenary army leaders. C-class light crusader HMS Caradoc with 1 R today. Okay, and let's just scan down it and see how horrific the modernisation of warfare is. Laid down 21st February 1916, launched 23rd December 1916. That's the day before Christmas Eve, the Eve at Christmas joke. Commissioned 15th June 1917, too late to be used at Gallipoli. I don't know what it said on this page 2 days ago. Became a base ship in April 1944, sold to be broken up for scrap on the 5th of Avril 1946 and scrapped in May of 1946. 4,190 tons. Propulsion, 2 Brown Curtis geared turbines. Remember that Lord George Brown was on shore at Gallipoli in the Crimean conflict. 6 Yarrow boilers, along with Raglan. Yeah, and all of that is revealed in Google Books, with the revelation that the German prince is on board. Yeah. 2 propellers, 4,000 horsepowers. Yeah, that's the piezo joke. Everywhere the horse needs to be inserted in the belly laugh. Range, carried 300 tons, 950 tons maximum of fuel oil. That's what they're going to get for this campaign from the Russian steppes. Okay, this is shocking. Armament, 5 by 6 inch Mark 12 guns. That's Pius the 12th is number. QF 3 inch 20 hundredweight AA guns. 2 by QF 2 pounder guns. 8 21 inch torpedo tubes. This is from a battleship, not from a submarine. That's how lethal these instruments are. And that's what the innocents in all sides have to contend with, because what the wars are about is the money lending, the profiteering, the reparations, and paying all of that back to the Rothschilds as the world's owners. Okay, they've got defence mechanisms that are not sufficient to stop them being sunk, to keep the numbers down. Okay, let's now go to the true love joke, and let's see, just in case we're missing anything. With her sister HMS Cassandra, she ran aground on Fair Isle on 15th August 1917. Both ships were successfully salvaged. That is the insurance money scam. You write a little story, you get an assessor like the man from Kelsey who went to assess the bomb damage, and then you can write them a blank cheque to be remunerated with. And Sweden, that is the victim of Cassandra's crimes, now that my brother and sister are gone, yeah, it's about familicide and they think it's really funny. Okay, that's the ABBA song. It's a lovely song. Yeah, all of it is right on the verge, just after ABBA have made the song about Waterloo and the British Central Bank going into enemy hands. Yeah, this time it's not the Germans, but it is the people that were poor, in inverted commas, in the Frankfurt ghettos, so they could be termed to be Germans, although their roots were Ukrainian and from the eastern region of the Black Sea, yeah, where the Amazons came from. Okay, right then, just in case there's anything else, let's go to the bottom. Yeah, there's loads of sister ships all over the world. There are ships with huge weapons on them, and all of the peace-loving countries never get a chance. So the Caroline, the Carysfort, the Cleopatra, the Comus, the Conquest, the Cordelia, the Calliope, the Champion, the Cambrian, the Canterbury, the Castor, the Constance, the Centaur, the Concorde. Oh shit, we're into the EU little white bull stories again. The Calypso, the Cassandra, the Caradoc with one R rather, Cardiff, Ceres, Coventry, Carioca, Carlu, Cairo, Calcutta. That's the Cairo religious joke. Yeah, the letters are the Piso codes for Cairo, and all of that is explained on Faking the New Testament, and all of this is just a huge joke for them, and they get prizes. The more damage you do with your vessel, you then get remunerated by private companies. And fuck knows who gets the money. The true love joke. Okay, the HMS Caradoc was a Royal Navy ship famous for the captures it made in the Bay of Biscay. That's just kind of south of Normandy. Her prices were handled by Truelove and Wilson. The ship's company, there is nothing left on the internet on Truelove and Wilson except the very rarefied facts I've found about their business registrations in Bradford, where the Yorkshire Freemasons work, and the Manningham name is in their street address. The ship's company was expected to share £70,000 when they came in. Unfortunately, the ship's company, do you get it? This is World War with subsidiaries of our navies trading in prize-winning competitions that mean that they can tuck away the booty for the sinking of a ship that was built by the enemy. Yeah, and the enemy have similar deals because the whole world is run and funded by the Rothschilds. Okay, the next bit is really, really sinister. It takes us to the bottom 3 tabs, and that is the establishment of the Peace of Amiens. Do you see the relationship of that to the so be it story that is the Amen that we say in every one of our Christian celebrations? Okay, it is bloody, 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 and it is a French subplot. Okay, but they were sent to Malta to assist in relieving the garrison there. Truelove-Wilson were the most famous prize agents in England. At least a quarter of the Royal Navy employed the firm to handle their prizes for them. Do you get it? That's the privatised Royal Navy profiteering. No one in uniform is allowed to know who gets the cash. Okay? According to the Marquis de Sainte Croix, now they've inserted this in the last few days because that is the Santa Cruz joke that I've already explained to you. Santa Cruz, when you translate it back from Spanish, means the Saint Crucifix. They handled the fabulous sums of money. This is perhaps justified by the HMS Caradoc and the large sums fetched by her captures. Both Truelove and Wilson were known to frequent the long rooms, that's the cricketing places, at the Lord's Cricket Ground in London, with the park bench in our local cricket pitch, as a joke about the war dead who wore kilts. Okay, so that is pasted from a wikia.com. It has not come from Wikipedia, because the Wikipedia entries that reveal the whole of this story have been taken down in the last 2 days. Okay, so it's a wikia.com. Yeah, wiki, Truelove and Wilson. That is how the international cover-ups occur, and it's really, really quick. And what you get is links to a man called Robert Sedgwick, and he was one of the early people who went west, young man. Okay, Robert Sedgwick, circa 1611 to 1656, was an English colonist born in Woburn, where the Duke of Bedford lives, and my wife used to work for a time. Okay, that's right next door to the golf course in Woburn, and we talked about the launch of the golf courses in Edinburgh only yesterday. Okay, baptised in the false Christian religion on 6th May 1613. But he's going west, young man, as an evangelist. Do you get it? And you should see what he's an expert in evangelizing in. Okay, see Robert Sedgwick, actor, and loads of cover-ups for Sedgwick all over the world that takes you into. So I don't think I've got time to show you that, but basically he's an evangelist. He's one of the Pilgrim Fathers. He was the son of William Sedgwick of London and brother of William Sedgwick. He has been identified with the Sedgwick who came over to New England in 1635 in the ship the Truelove. The rest of the Truelove story about the Pilgrims has been deleted from Wikipedia. Okay, age 24, although in the record of the Custom House his name is written Joe. That's the Joseph joke about the launch of a new false religion, like the Joseph in Egypt, the Joseph in Nazareth, and the Joseph in Bethlehem. That's the same carpenter. Okay, instead of Roe Sedgwick, he was made a freeman of Massachusetts on 9th March 1673, and this is the man that launched the Boston Tea Party. He was commander of the castle in Boston Harbour in 1641 and was Major General of the Massachusetts forces in 1652. He ordered the building of Castle William, the first fort at Boston. Can you see the links to the Duke of Cambridge coming through again and again? Okay, in 1653 Sedgwick was in England and Cromwell selected him to command an expedition to drive the sectarian Dutch from the New Netherlands, giving him the rank of Major in the army. Okay, do you get it? That is where Churchill fought on behalf of the Orangemen. And this is an English appointee being appointed by Cromwell. Okay, he raised, in spite of various obstruction, a few hundred men in the New England colonies and was about to set out against the Dutch June 1654, when news of the peace with Holland put a stop to his proceedings. On this, Sedgwick turned his forces against the French in Arcadia. Arcadia is the cover-up. Captured the forts of St John's and Port Royal and a settlement at Penobscot, and added Acadia to the British dominions, and they all get prizes for every step that they take. Let's see if there are any more highlights. You can read it for yourself. It is shocking. Okay, and the Spanish towns come into it. Sedgwick arrived in Jamaica. He found the troops dying fast everywhere in disorder, and necessaries of every kind wanting. You must in a manner begin the work over again. Yeah, when the troops are dying, they're not content with one genocide, they keep replaying it over and over and over again. Okay, I have not highlighted any more in that, but you can see that they're globalized conscripts to actually become mercenaries, and they are working for all sides in every conflict just to get the numbers down. And these are just some of the hundreds of pages that you can find on the cover up of this. Ghostbusters, Sedgwick Hotel, 12th floor. Yeah, the comedy, film ladies t-shirts, Edward Sedgwick, Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. Yeah, that's not the Sedgwick that is the mercenary missionary, it's the covers. Yeah, they're all over the place. And there was one in popular culture in comedy, but I cannot find it now. The Ghostbusters thing was huge. That's Hollywood movies. And this is Kyra Sedgwick, who's married to another Sedgwick in the vaudeville sector. Okay. Okay. Events and things to do in Sedgwick. That's a place name. And so let's move down the tabs just in case we run out of batteries. We can always come back to it. This is another part of the Sedgwick joke. Okay, the True Love joke has now been explained, and you can find True Love on the business register. Let's go down in case I've posted that little bit on the same page, because that massive prize winning thing for the armed forces that is awarding remuneration to the Navy for its acts of brutalising other countries, yeah, it's actually run as a business, and there is a residue of that in Bradford. Okay, this is more cover up. Creature Comforts UK TV review. Okay, Julie Sedgwick, TV shows starring Julie Sedgwick. British cinema, Stanley Lupino's comedy Happy and You Made Me Love by John Sedgwick. Mid-1930s Britain. P-Interest, BBC comedy TV series Kyra Sedgwick. Dawn Sedgwick management website, the BBC comedy programme. Kelly Ann Lyons, National Peer Society. Do you remember the St Peter joke? Yeah. Peter Sedgwick has said that he was rescued by the BBC's own lifeboat, which took him ashore where he was BBC One's peculiar Sunday night comedy drama series Sugar Town. Okay. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Sedgwick Hotel again. That's the visit to the place where they did the Ghostbusters thing. The Closer TV series, films by Kyra Sedgwick, Creature Comfort complete series featuring Julie Sedgwick. 6 Degrees, Kevin Bacon, the husband of Kyra Sedgwick. Kyra Sedgwick shows off her tattoo. That's the military tattoo joke. Okay, do you get it? That's the military tattoo in Las Vegas. Dawn Sedgwick management at BBC Radio 4. Everything is tucked away and covered up by the shithawks. List of BBC British comedies. Okay. Missing Sedgwick. That's the one I cannot find. It was a really common name, and which is why it resonates in my head, but they've deleted all of that really common stuff. Hallelujah was a British sitcom made by Yorkshire Television for the ITV network, and together in a comedy series In Loving Memory between 1979 and 1986. Geoffrey Baildon, Mr. Sedgwick. Amanda Barry, Wikipedia, series of British comedy films, Carry On films. Okay, Alma Sedgwick, that's the Lalma Tunnel cover-up. All of that occurred just 24 hours ago when I made the video on the killing of Princess Diana in the Lalma Tunnel. The Apple joke. Okay, I still cannot find the stuff on the business register in, oh yeah, there it is, further down, company check. So this is the Cambridge cover-ups, and Cambridge is all over the stories about the Duke of Cambridge, as you would expect, but none of them until yesterday declare that that is the Duke of Cambridge that sired Queen Victoria's only legit child, and he was a German and he died in London at the end of his life. Yeah, and he died in elite palaces. Right then, here we go. So, Cambridge geologists require jokes. So you remember the jokes about the geologists solving all of the mysteries about Gallipoli and finding all of the bones from all of the Allied troops, and that's the Anzac joke and the Anzac film made by Rupert Murdoch. Okay, so the geologist joke here is out of St Emmanuel College. That's Emmanuel in the Christmas songs. Yeah, and it's got a street address called Downing Street. Have you heard of Downing Street before? And it specialises in the dinosaur fossil fraud and the renewable oil cover-up. Okay, Sedgwick Museum of Earth Sciences. Can you see why they need to have a cover-up for the remuneration of the Army and the Navy and all of the business links I told you about yesterday involving the Time Team and their spouses, who are colonels in the British Army and are interlocked with the deviant doctors who are asset stripping and fear mongering in the NHS because they pretend that they're botching operations, and that leads to the retraining of every healthcare professional for every year in their life in the profession, and they have to pay for all of that and make very wealthy people of people like my brother-in-law Dr. Andrew Stephen Hancock's, whose asset stripped dentistry and his house in the Prime Minister's constituency is now worth £675,000. Yeah, that's the one who's no longer funding my wife's divorce proceedings, and you can find him on YouTube, but nothing that he does in the real criminal world is exposed until I come along. Okay, and so let's go to the next one. This is the company check Yorkshire registration. Okay, Truelove-Wilson Limited, registered address 249 Manningham Lane, Bradford, West Yorkshire, BD8 7EW. Mr. John Andrew Wigley, Mr. Michael Leonard Hutton. I don't know whether or not that is Deirdre's children or Alistair's children. Yeah, nothing would surprise me anymore. There's Mr. Richard Jeremy Binns. There used to be a Binns retailer in all of our high streets. Mr. Barry Malcolm Lynn, Mr. Barry Malcolm Lynn, Mr. Dennis Alred, Mr. Dennis Alred. They've got 3 overlapping directors covering different periods of time. Yeah, and they've got at the bottom Mr. Raymond Bullock. Okay, that's the only company that you can find, because remember that the Trueloves went to America centuries ago and they launched Christianity there, like the YMCA concept. Right then, I don't know if there's any more. So there's the boardroom, Mr. Michael Leonard Hutton. Yeah, there's nothing much to find out about it since they removed everything on Truelove-Wilson since I began to poke around in this sector. Yeah, that's the Trueloves who remunerate the people who sink the ships in the battle. And presumably now, I think the ship that was sunk in the Falklands was called the Hood. Do you get it? The Robin Hood under friendly fire concept. Yeah, and the man, because his ship was sunk, it means that somebody else in the Argentinian fascist team gets the cash. It's a kind of prize, like you get in the circuses, which come into the story further down as we get into the romantic French sector. Okay, and okay, so this is the Santa Cruz joke again, and this is all that is left on the internet on that link to the people who went west in the 17th century and became the Pilgrims. The Marquis de Santa Cruz was the proprietor of the cricketing long rooms. He was short and plump, but elegant. He dressed in the height of fashion, save for his hair, which he wore long, tied back. That's the ponytail, the Piso Hippos joke, and powdered in the style of the previous generation, like the people at Versailles who ran the revolution in league with Napoleon entirely for cash. And that comes in a little bit further down. Okay, and that is the Santa Cruz joke. Everything in the California place names is a joke about the religious fraud. Okay, and that's just confirmation that those jokes you now understand. That's the Lord's Cricket Ground, the Long Room, and the Santa Crucifix joke at Santa Cruz in America, near Monterey. Yeah, and when you listen to the songs about Picardy sung by Frank Sinatra and opera singers, yeah, that is about the brutalisation of the Somme, yeah, near Amiens. And I'm going to tell you that story in the next few minutes. Okay, we're getting through this surprisingly quickly, which is good, because my advisors who are sending me massive documents on treaties on the freedom issues involving drinking water, yeah, yeah, and they want me to merit that their document should be published, and for me to give up my time on issues like that. Yeah. Horatio Hornblower. Right then, so all you find when you look for the true love stuff now is the links to the old stuff about the Navy, and this is an item on Horatio Hornblower, and I just wish I could find the lead into that. It's on one of those earlier links that we've given you about the people that were involved in the old conflicts, naval conflicts. So this is a guy who's depicted out of the Hollywood movies. Yeah, and this is the new Wikimedia stuff. Okay, here we are. The Captain Hornblower novels were by a man called C.S. Forrester, who does not even qualify as an elite writer until today. Okay, I've got those novels. I used to read them. I used to be absolutely besotted with them, and my son has read all of the flash books on the British Empire being created. Okay, that says Hornblower and the Atropos, C.S. Forrester. Yeah, he's not in the listings in that book. Okay, and this is because this was dredged up as false news. Okay, okay, and this is where it came from, Wikimedia, and there are only little snippets of information. The pictures are from Hollywood movies, and the books are by people who are relatively anonymous authors. Okay, and what we've got is Horatio Hornblower was an officer in the British Royal Navy during the Napoleonic Wars, clever but unhappy for most of his life. He found fame and fortune as a hero of the Navy. It's ever such an up-to-date picture, isn't it? Yeah, and that's the Napoleonic Wars leading up to 1815. Ever such a modernised picture, and this time they do not have time for fine art from the Louvre. Yeah, and you might have noticed that Horatio just happens to be Nelson's Christian name. That's the Nelson in Trafalgar Square where Gordon Bowden is allowed to rant about the BBC, but nobody ever gets to know what he's talking about, as the BBC once again emancipate themselves as innocent leaders of our world. Okay, notice there are no fine art illustrations since the original Wikipedia pages were sunk only 2 days ago. Takes them a little bit of time, yeah? And Horatio just happens to be Nelson's Christian, in inverted commas, name. Yeah, there is no Christ. They just make up all of the stories. Right then, I don't think there's very much to this. You can see how shallow it is, because they're in a panic. Hornblower was the son of the doctor. Hyde, Rotherhithe, these are the places where I used to get drunk as a rugby playing student, because I went to Thames Poly, where the terror event occurred when they beheaded the man at the HSBC called, I forget the name of the victim of the beheading. The head was never found, incidentally. And when Gordon Bowden looked that person up, when he looked up the dead Gunner Rigby, he told me that Gunner Rigby is never been registered on the British census. Yeah? He has not got the gall to tell the free world that, and the gall story is quite sadly linked to the Gallipoli name by the romantic French people that we'll describe later on. Okay, he was given a classical education, and by the time he joined the Royal Navy at age 17 he was well versed in Greek and Latin. So this is the elite traitor concept that takes you into the Fleming family, David Steele, and all of those people we talk about daily. He was tutored in French by a penniless French emigre and had an aptitude for mathematics which served him well as a navigator. Okay? Right then, I've not read the rest of it. You can read it for yourself, because it's on Wikimedia and it is meaningless and it is totally trivial and it is pictured people in modern day films. Yeah? And returning to England, Hornblower was demobilised during the Peace of Amiens, causing him great financial distress. He must not have been able to sink many of the opposition's ships. That's opposition in inverted commas. He resorted to making a living as a professional gambler. See the IMF later on in the romantic French side of the story. He was employed for the long rooms playing whist for a modest income. During this time, Hornblower took up residence in Portsmouth near the Isle of Wight, where Princess Victoria was being wedded to the blind King George, Prince George of Cumbria. He was her only one true love on the Isle of Wight, and the kid's name was Marcus Manuel, murdered by other Germans just a little bit further on, because he's the legitimate heir to the throne. Okay, and he made Queen Victoria a legitimate monarch, because she was not eligible for that. She had none of the royal marks that Greg Hallett talked about. Okay, and when that Duke of Cambridge was on board the Caradoc, it was in the Crimean conflict very, very long ago, and ever since the monarchy have been illegitimate in Britain. The Amiens stories and the stories about the bloodlines that are in charge of Britain, France and elsewhere for all of recorded human history in inverted commas is quite a scandal. Let's go to the bottom in case there's more. I don't think I looked at all of this, but this is the story about someone who's been brought in yet to divert the attention from the true love concept and the issues that ensue from the true love company that are rewarding the profiteers in all wars for their brutalisation of the opposition. Okay, and yeah, the obfuscations in this are obvious. So you've got Clausewitz and the Maswich story I told you about World War II the other day. They are ultra responsive. They've got armies of traitors to our countries leading the cover-ups, and when you hear them on Radio 4 it's just pathetic, and they're sounding ever so nervous. Yeah, Nochti was back on this morning. They're demonising Islam again. Okay, St Helena, all of the stuff about Napoleon and Napoleon's actual bloodline, all of his body doubles, all of the silk ladder stories on Elba, and all of the stories about him being released back into France as I forget the name of when the body double was interned in Elba by the victors in the Napoleonic Wars. He returned to Paris as Lenormand, that was his surname, and he's buried under the French War Office right in the centre of Paris. Yeah, Lenormand, right next to Amiens. Yeah, Normandy. That is a really sinister part of the story. Okay, Hornblower ships, Justinian, Indefatigable, Renown, Hotspur, Atropos, Lydia, you get it? The Lydia joke about Lydia with the tattoos, sung about by the Marx Brothers. Yeah, and that's the whole of the jocular world history. Andrew Jackson, the Federal Bank in America, the crossing the Delaware stuff, and some of these people are brought into power just as the Boston Tea Party happens, and that is the joke. Yeah, it is all a massive set of sins. There's the Duchess of Sutherland, who sent the colonists to the colonies, and all the Australian ANZACs came back to Europe to their death in the Mediterranean. Yeah, through Lemnos, an icon for the four fruits of Israel, the lemon, Witch of Endor, HMS Nonsuch, HMS Lotus, Revan sloops, HMS Moth, HMS Harvey bomb catches. Do you get it? Everything I tell you in the previous video is covered up by these teams, and this is the Wikimedia cover up, which is particularly inaccurate because they're in a desperate panic attack. HMS Phoebe. Yeah, all of the movies that are made by Rab C. Nisbet involving Hugh and Phoebe, it's a joke about the English counter movements that keep Scotland enslaved. Yeah, HMS Clorinda, HMS Roebuck, Horatio Hornblower. Oh, it's confessing that he was created by author C.S. Forrester, who wrote 11 books about the character between. Hornblower is iconic in the age of sail, traditional naval fiction. Not many people know that those earliest battleships had torpedo tubes to sink the Germans' earlier battleships. But the most vicious joke of all is that Captain von Trapp worked for the Austrian Navy. Austria is a landlocked country. Okay, and that is the Von Trapp family singers that launched the drones through the connection to their entrepreneurial leader, who's Detweiler MacDonald. Yeah, the Detweiler Von Trapp family singers. They now sell the world's drones, and the adverts for that come to me through my Gmail system from Andrew Carnegie's Institute. He's the one who built our local library, where all of the innocent and revealing books are systematically burnt and buried in a ditch. Okay, right then, let's get to the French side, and it is really, really sad. Okay, let's start with the Napoleonic story. So, there are two treaties of Amiens. I'd only learned that as I looked at the quest to look at what was resolved at Amiens. Okay, the first one, the Treaty of Amiens, temporarily ended hostilities between the French Republic and Great Britain. That's red, white and blue. Okay, during the French Revolutionary Wars, that's the Napoleonic Wars, it was signed in the city of Amiens on the 21st of March 1802. Oh no, so this is I'm not sure what this is. So that's French Republic and Great Britain in the Revolutionary Wars, which were ended by Wellington, who on the Rothschild register now is called Wesley Wood, and Gordon Bowden would not let me know that out of loyalty to the profiteers. Yeah, the Wesley Wood story is a joke about the Four Corners and all the frauds in Australia, but he's actually the Duke of Wellington on the Rothschild's interlocks. It was signed in the city of Amiens. That's like Amen, isn't it? On the 25th March 1802, Germinal 4, year X in the French Revolutionary calendar. Not sure what that means. By Joseph Bonaparte and the Marquis Cornwallis. As a definitive treaty of peace, the consequent Peace of Amiens lasted only 1 year. Isn't that funny? And was the only and the parallels with World War I and World War II are almost perfect. Yeah, all of it is a joke. It was the only period of peace between, wait for it, 1793 and 1815. Under the treaty, that's the consequent peace lasted only 1 year. Under the treaty, Britain recognised the French Republic. The British Parliament had only 2 years previously dropped England's historical claim to the now defunct French kingdom. Together with the Treaty of Lunéville, do you get it? That's the moon town. Yeah, and all of the stories about the moon and the deities and the Celine Dion jokes. The deities are the Dion stories, and all of it is a laugh at the actual creators of the universe. Okay, the Treaty of Amiens marked the end of the Second Coalition. The world had been at war between 1793 and 1815. Okay. And this is just a temporary truce in the Napoleonic conflict. And we've told you all about how the elites from France and all over Europe flee to Melrose, they flee to Northampton, and they are set up in posh homes and mansions, but the people that fight in the wars are starved to death, and that is the anti-communist movement. Yeah, and the people that are culled in the battles are culled by Bonaparte, who's a direct relative of Louis XIV, and all of that is laughed at in the Hollywood films. Joseph Bonaparte, Kingdom of Naples. Do you get it? The Kingdom of Naples. France withdrew its forces from the Papal States and the Kingdom of Naples. Naples is Herculaneum in the old days, and that is where the New Testament was written by the Pisos, and that's the Papal States. That's the papacy that write the King Arthur stories about Britain, and the red, white and blue things that have everybody so confused. Okay, and we saw the references to the nurse Florence Nightingale in the Crimean campaign, and you've got city and guilds called the Hospitaliers. Yeah, and you can see now what the motives are for the city and guilds. They're not interested in the statistics of the war dead or how many people get amputations and are successfully sent back into the Paralympic movement. They're interested only in who gets the reparations and the prize for sinking the ships, which is why the man who was the head of HMS Hood in the Falklands was court-martialed and stripped of his position. Do you now see the cash motives for everything that happens, and Mrs. Thatcher taking us into that conflict to win the election? Right then, let's get a move on. I've not read this. It will be full of sensational jokes for them, but I do not have the time to do that. Okay, so that's the second Amiens Treaty. The first one was signed in 1423. Okay, that's a long time back in history. What were we fighting about then? The Treaty of Amiens 1423 was a defensive agreement between John of Lancaster, the first Duke of Bedford. That's the Bedford air balloon joke. Bedford has a river running through it that ends up in Norfolk, and that is a massive joke. It's the joke about the war bond people being in that town and planning the war, planning the movement of people going east, young man, and going west, young man, as pilgrims yeah, and as revolutionaries in the church and in the Christian movement. And those that go east launch the David Copperfield story and steer forth into greatness as entrepreneurs, with other people's women wrecking their lives in their period of romantic affiliation. And the ships that get sunk are a joke about the real ships that get sunk in, this is Dickens's writing, okay? The Bedford Falls joke takes you back to Bideford and to Stratford and on Avon, and that is where the Shakespearean stories are written. Yeah, the man that I've told you about who does not qualify, C.S. Forrester, is a bit part writer. Until I come along, he will now become someone who's really famous, because he's part of the cover-up for the brutalisation of Gallipoli twice, involving the royal prince, who was the only legitimate husband Queen Victoria ever had. That's why they're so panicky. Okay, the Treaty of Troyes. So, was a defensive agreement between John of Lancaster, 1st Duke of Bedford, Philip the Good, Duke of Burgundy, and Arthur III, Earl of Richmond, where the German prince died in London in the elite palace, and the Duke of Brittany. But just to confuse people, we still have Richmond in Yorkshire, and it's quite close to the place where the cemetery Scarborough collapsed onto the beach. And that contains another elite writer, the man who wrote about the vampires and all of that falling onto the Yorkshire beach. Yeah, and his name that wrote about the vampires, I forget what it was but the vampires came into the story about the trenches in France near the Somme, which is the culmination of this story as we talked about it yesterday, and that becomes the war graves tourism industry. Who was the man who wrote about the vampires from Yorkshire? Jimmy Savile was a freeman of Scarborough and all of that was interlocking news to cover up his crimes, and all of the stuff that he did with the kids. I do not want to talk about that. I want the people that led us into wars to be unprepared to do it ever again, because we're on to how they do it now. Okay? The Treaty of Amiens was signed on 13th April 1423 and formed in the aftermath of the Treaty of Troyes. It helped maintain the Anglo-Burgundian alliance until 1435, and the basis of the dual monarchy of the two kingdoms of England and France, first formed by King Henry V of England. And this is the symbol for Amiens is the fleur-de-lis. And the Burgundy vineyards is where David Murray tries to treat Sean Connery's heart attacks. Do you get the picture? We're ever so close to the war criminals entirely for profit. Okay, so Amiens is actually the Somme. That's too sinister to publicise. Okay, here we are. It's got magnificent cathedrals, and the Church of Rome's frauds are huge, and it is unforgivable what they've done to the world. Okay, there we are. There's the symbol, the fleur-de-lis at the top. That's probably an oak, but it could be one of the French jokes about the woods that are used to hang Jesus Christ on. Okay, that comes into all of these stories again. See Battle of Amiens for the locality in Australia. See Amiens, Queensland, and Rupert Murdoch's jokes. Okay, it's near thickened Dunkirk, but they have not got the courage to show that it's up here. Yeah, right across from where Dad's army are at Warmington-on-Sea. Yeah, do you get it? The Channel complex and the Channel tunnel contract is given to Greenwich, where the Admiralty used to run out of, and that's Baroness Blackstone, who thinks I'm not a very efficient researcher. Yeah, that was the second interview I was rejected in by that woman. Okay, it's near. And do you get the Dunkirk joke? Dun means black and Kirk means fraud. Yeah, and that's the Captain Kirk story, the killing in Normandy and the launch of Star Trek. So the black Kirk joke, the false religion that is Christianity. And that is where they choose to turn the profiteering teams entirely around on their heels. That's their jackboot heels, when they get to Amiens on the French coast, which is Dunkirk. Yeah, Plan B or Plan C. If you look at the entries on these last 2 pages about the conflicts that were fought way back in the 15th century and the ownership of the world and how slippy and greasy it all is. Okay, region, Picardy, France, roses are shining. Look it up on the internet, takes you into California with Frank Sinatra, who in Hollywood is alleged to be the equivalent of the Godfather. Yeah, department, the Somme, arrondissement, Amiens, just like Amen in the Bible. Intercommunality, that means that they're kind of like communists. They live together and they share everything that they have in life. Sorry, that's very disloyal of me. I know some people in France who are genuine and innocent. I will not reveal their names because I want the weight of conscience to be hanging over the rest of them. Okay, Mayor Bridget Fourie, there's nothing sinister there. Population 2006, only 139,000. It's a commune in northern France, like Max lives in. Yeah, that's Max, my Facebook friend, who believes in the chemtrail menace. He does not look at the numbers of the war dead, and I got really excited when I met Max Bliss and I learned that he lived in a commune and that he might be prepared to help us remove the shackles of the IMF. It's just southwest of Lille. The lilies of the field jokes. It is the capital of the Somme department in Picardy. Later it was run by barbarian tribes, later by the Normans. Yeah, that's the Norman conquestors of southern Britain and the Anglo-Saxon territories. 100 Days Offensive. Okay, this is about the town was fought over during both the First and Second World Wars, suffering much damage and being occupied several times by both sides, in inverted commas. Do you get it? What they did on the eve of the emancipation of their town was that they bombed the Free French revolutionaries who were in the jail to let them free. Yeah, they dropped bombs on them. That is the ones that fought for their country in the Free French movement, and when they went back to Britain to try and get help from de Gaulle, they were dead under the building. Okay, isn't it clever? It led directly to the armistice with Germany. The French did not fight very long, and the dates are given below. Okay, Amiens Cathedral is the tallest of the large classic Gothic churches of the 13th century and the largest in France of its kind. It is a World Heritage Site, and it is still standing, and it is magnificent despite all of the little tiffs they've had with all of their cousins and the profiteers who win the prizes both sides of the channel. Okay. A puff pastry tart made with leeks and cream. Okay, the leek is the icon for the French linkage, and they make duck patty out of almond paste biscuits, chocolate and orange curved biscuits, pâté de canard, duck pat de Amiens, duck patty in pastry. Yeah, ever so artistic and ever so interesting to people who are consumed as fans of the Bake Off. Okay, right then, I've got some highlights. I hope they've come over. The First World War. At the start of the war in August 1914, Amiens had been the advance base for the British Expeditionary Force. Yeah, intertwining and inter-partying with the people in the silk stockings every evening. It was captured by the German army on the 31st August 1914. Not much contention there. In August it was British. In August it was British. It was German. Oh no, sorry. In September it was German. But it was in August it was British, then it was German, but it was recaptured by the French on the 28th September. Isn't that convenient? So that's in green, just to show you that the profiteering is entirely underway already. British Logistics Centre, especially during the Battle of the Somme in 1916, that's a tragedy. Yeah, that's the people at the war memorials every year on 11/11. Amiens was one of the key objectives of the German Spring Offensive, which was launched on 27th March 1918. Yeah, so the Battle of the Somme's there, and they've got a Spring Offensive to intensify that just before they kill all of the ordinary working men, before they return to their jobs and their wives. The German Second Army pushed back the British Fifth Army, who fought a series of defensive actions. Eventually on 4th April the Germans succeeded in capturing Villers-Bretonneux, which overlooked, kind of like a Brittonic concept, which overlooked Amiens, only for it to be retaken by an Australian thousands and thousands of miles away. Counter-attack that night. That's the Anzac joke, and all of the war dead are in France. Yeah, it is tragic. During the fighting, Amiens was bombarded by German artillery and aircraft. More than 2,000 buildings were destroyed. Yeah, this is the last year of the war. On 8th August 1918, a successful Allied counterstroke, the Battle of Amiens, was the opening phase of the 100 Days Offensive, which led directly to the armistice with Germany. So the profiteers have gone right up to Captain Manwaring's Channel coast. That's Manwaring of the HSBC. They stopped there, they turned around, they gave Winston Churchill and Beaverbrook at the munitions and the Air Force and the Navy munitions profiteering industry 2.5 years to get their act together, to launch all of the massive offensive, and within 100 days the whole of the art treasures all across Europe are in Switzerland. And that ended the war. Dresden was firebombed. Yeah, I've got all of the speeches by Winston Churchill, who was disgraced in Gallipoli in World War I and stripped of his office as a warmonger. He's the profiteer that profits from all of this, and when he has his golden wedding anniversary, it's on the Côte d'Azur in Beaverbrook's elite mansion. And as a joke, it's called Cappadocia, which was Julius Caesar's elite estates just south of the Black Sea. Yeah, and that is Julius Caesar with the same initials as Jesus Christ. In World War II, during the Battle of France, Amiens was captured by the Germans' 1st Panzer Division. That's the Pink Panther, and the Diamonds jokes about the war booty. The Panzers, they were the massive town in Germany that still is involved in munitions. It's run by the Krupps. First World War, Second World War. Okay, that's the Krupps who owned the Schloss Hotel chain, which is now Ednam House, and I'm now told that they have new owners. Last time I looked,
They were in receivership and they were in the hands of Ernst & Young. 7th Battalion Royal Sussex Regiment, a territorial infantry battalion of the British Army. Yeah, 581 men, loads of Freemasonic numbers. 132 men are commemorated in the GWC burials. This is the prize winning people, their families. Get the cash bungs. On 18th February 1944, British aircraft bombed the prison in Amiens as part of Operation Jericho. And I told you the story about San Quentin yesterday, didn't I? Bombing the prison. So that's to get rid of the members of the French resistance who could come out and free their country, were it not for de Gaulle and Jacques Foccart, who keep it suppressed as fascists. Prior to the Normandy landings of the 6th June 1944, I'm getting ever so nervous about my batteries, Allied aircraft concentrated on disabling communications in occupied France. This is the code story, yeah, that was solved in rural Hertfordshire near Milton Keynes, and the railway junction at Longo to the southeast of Amiens was attacked by 200 bombers of the Royal Air Force. That's the Duke of Bedford's Milton Keynes on the night of the 12th and 13th June. There was much damage in the town itself. Amiens was liberated on the 31st August 1944 by the 11th Armoured Division, part of 30 Corps, commanded by General Lieutenant Brian Horrocks. Okay, we're heroes again. And all sides benefit from it. All of the ordinary people are in the shallow graves and are in the tourism sector now. On June 1960, the new region of Picardy was formed from the Department of Aisne, Oise and Somme. In May 1968, students in Amiens joined a large scale, this is a European strike, okay? They were put down, and then the following October the University of Amiens was founded on a campus in the southwestern suburbs of the city, specialising in economics and the training of people who work in the IMF for the whole of the rest of the century, when they steal from all European citizens and launder it into Washington, where Miss Lagarde works and reminds people everywhere that they must pay their taxes, and they pretend that he has several death attempts on him, and he's at JFK's funeral, and right next to him in the chain of command with the hanky on his nose is the man who plays Poirot from Belgium, where the hole was in the Maginot Line. Amiens lies on the basin of the Somme River, more or less where its tributaries in the Selle and the Avre flow in. That is the Avriel Jewish angel joke, the Poisson d'Avril joke, and all of it is vicious, but God understands it better than anybody else, and he gets a laugh on the 1st of April yeah, when he imposes the earthquakes on the brutalised regions where the leadership team still thrives. Okay, I think that's the end of the story, except for the identification of who the profiteers in the IMF are. The walls of the town's former factory of dye are now those of the École Supérieure d'Art. That is the link to the invention of dye stuffs in Canaan, which is the naming of this town, because that was done by King Amuhemnat, and this is Amiens, yeah, and the dyes in Canaan were used to write all of the religious text by all of the human messianic religious frauds. Okay, do you get it? Amiens, and it becomes the sign-off for the Christian fraud all around the world. After they tell you the lies, and you have to say, so be it. Okay, as it was written. That's the joke about Amiens. Takes you into Egypt, where Joseph was the first capitalist with the coat of many colours, and the links to the Achilles and the people that worked for the Free French revolutionaries, or the people that genuinely cared about their country, yeah, they're portrayed as the Achilles heel in this. Okay, not to be confused with the commune of Saint Acul, situated 37 mile, and this is the military cemetery there for the First World War victims, 1914 to 1918. So the country is riddled with political turncoats, and the ordinary people die as a consequence, and the armies that they send away to other places die because they put them down after the war's over, or